Hello, it's Carla McLaren again, and I am starting off this series called Emotionally Speaking with a question from Anthony from my Facebook page. And let me read the question so you get the whole piece of it. In Emotionally Speaking, we're looking at all the emotions that are involved. So, Anthony's asking about accepting rejection and other related emotions when things don't go the way we planned, and learning to let go, trust life, and have faith that things will turn around. So I asked another, a clarifying question. He's had a lot of losses over a period of time, just sort of constant losses that are testing his faith. Now, there are a number of emotions in here, obviously, because a number of things are happening. So if you're being rejected, that might cause sadness. It also might cause grief. And the difference between sadness and grief is, with sadness, you have a choice about letting go. Sadness comes forward to help you let go of something that isn't working anymore. But with rejection, you didn't have a choice. And so that would call for the emotion of grief, which comes forward when you lose something and you didn't have an option or a choice. So someone dies and you didn't have anything to do with that. You're just left with the loss. Or you're rejected. Or a relationship ends. Or you lose a house that you were bidding for. Or you did not get the job, right? It's not something that you have a choice about. So I think one of the things about faith and the concept that I'm going to let go and look ahead is that it can be at odds with grief. So when it's time to grieve, it's time to say, yes, I have lost, and I didn't have a choice about it. And for a lot of people, without sort of a tradition of grief rituals, that sense of loss can feel insurmountable. Because when you go into grief, you really do have to accept the sense of loss. And in grief, it's not time to be looking ahead and having faith and believing in the future. It's time to feel the loss. And so those two things, grief and looking ahead, can seem to be completely at odds. They are not if you can go into the grief and do it in a careful way. I talk about, in my book, The Language of Emotions, I talk about grief rituals. And it is a way that people in all cultures have developed to help them weather and move through the necessary passages that must occur in the psyche and in the community when things are lost. And so if you want to look at the grief chapter in The Language of Emotions, or go look at the grief, I'll put a link to it, look at the grief video that I did a couple of months ago. And we can talk about grief and how that works, so that once you have grieved, then your other emotions can arise again, and you can look forward to the future because you have properly let go of the things that you already lost, right? So if you sort of hold on to that, it's kind of a good idea, but not really. You're like, I can do it. When in fact, what needs to happen is a mourning for the losses. Then that is what can sort of stop the capacity for faith to come forward, because faith would be a trust in the future, which maybe you don't have because of the rejection and the loss that have been sort of mounting up. Faith would also be sort of happiness and joy, looking to the future. And right now, you need to look to the past and see what you've lost and what the importance of it was, and to honor it and to mourn it and to grieve it, and to stop where you are and say, yes, I have lost these things. And it is very surprising that if you do, then your other emotions can come forward and carry you to the future. But until those losses are grieved, then they'll sort of be hanging on you like a cape or a weight that makes it hard to look forward, because it's not time to look forward. It's time to grieve. Lots of losses test everybody's faith, and a lot of losses in a row can be exhausting. So take care of yourself, rest, find things that are delightful to do, and look at grief. Grief is one of the best friends that you'll ever have. It is a beautiful emotion, but for many of us in Western culture, we don't really have functional grief rituals. So that's the problem. It's not with you, it's not with the losses, it's not with your faith. It's simply an issue with grief. So I wish you good grief, And I'll talk to you next week with Emotionally Speaking.